Rabbi Eli Abadie is the senior rabbi in the Association of Gulf Jewish Communities and the senior rabbi in the residence of the Jewish Council of the Emirates. So, if you don't know what that means, basically he's the Chief Rabbi of Dubai. And Rabbi Abadie is a fascinating story because growing up and being born in Lebanon, I believe, being born in Lebanon, to have lived through the history of what we are teaching you here today, all the way to being in a situation of being accepted, influenced, chosen in a what's called, I guess, a more modern and progressive Arab country like Dubai, is sure to be an amazing story. In the way of, Rabbi Abadie was in Yeshiva University, which is where I went to university and to do my smicha. So the history of Sephardi Jews in New York and in Brooklyn. Rabbi Abadie was also the senior rabbi of the Safra Synagogue in Manhattan. So a lot to share with you guys, and I don't want to take away from his time, but I just want to welcome, and we should all welcome him, Rabbi Eli Abadie. So it is, with the laser over here. Okay. So if you want to use that. I don't want to, there you go. Okay. This one over here.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Albo, for inviting me, and thank you, Mr. Hakimian, for a very eloquent presentation. Thank you, the school, for welcoming us this morning. So I'm going to go through my and my family journey for the last 600 years and how it played a role in the expulsion or in the deportation or in the persecution of Jews in the Middle East. So Jews lived in the Middle East for millennia, from the time of the first temple and then later on for the second temple. Eventually, with the Muslim conquest of North Africa, went all the way to Spain. Many Jews moved to Spain, although some historians say that, that's the wrong one. Okay. Some historians say that the presence of Jews in Spain from the time of King Solomon. But be that as it may, my family starts, my immediate 600-year-old family starts in Spain, the land of Maimonides. During the expulsion, or after the expulsion in 1492, my family moved to northern Spain, southern France, and they went into Provence, and they lived in Provence for several centuries. As you can see, the migration of Jews from Spain migrated from Spain, all southern Europe, North Africa, all the way to the Middle East. My family, as it was already in Provence, migrated this way, all the way to the Ottoman Empire, to Turkey, and eventually settling in Aleppo, Syria. Aleppo was part of the Great Ottoman Empire. Now it is under the Syrian government for that border, but from Turkey all the way end up in Aleppo around the middle 1800 or early 1800. There's a Rabbi Abadie in Salonique, near Rhodes in Greece. It's more over here. Right? But there have been Abadies all around Southern Europe. If you go to Southern Europe today and look in the telephone directories of the all time, you'll see Abadies all around Southern Europe. Unfortunately, most of them are not Jewish. I guess the Jewish remnants went all the way to Syria and settled in Aleppo. So this beautiful citadel of Aleppo is very, very well known from the time of the Roman Empire. And in Aleppo, in a sense, they lived well. They lived for over a century relatively well under Arab jurisdiction and lordship, if you will. They had certain rights and certain rights they did not have, as Mr. Hakimian mentioned. Those prohibitions were throughout the pan-Arab world. Each region had a more specific one, some less, some more. It all really depended on who the leader was. A leader who hated the Jews, then he would put a lot of restrictions on the Jews, would persecute them. A leader who loved the Jews because of any personal experience he had, and he would treat them very well. So they lived well in Aleppo, as I said, relatively. And then until 1947, as Rabbi Albo had mentioned, I will not read this because it was already mentioned, but in 1947, November 30th, December 1st and 2nd were the 3 days of rage. There was a pogrom in Aleppo. In particular, left the community devastated. 75 Jews were killed, hundreds were injured, and more than 200 Jewish homes, shops, and synagogues were destroyed. Now, my parents lived exactly next door to the synagogue, to the great synagogue in Aleppo. And my mother was watching from the window how all the mobs climbed over the wall of the synagogue, although the gates were locked, and they were helped by police officers from the Syrian government to climb over that synagogue. They went into the synagogue. They took all this Sifrei Torah out, they took all the Chumashim, Sidurim, and the rabbi was there. Rabbi Moshe Mizrahi, who was the chief rabbi of Aleppo, was there. He refused to leave. They carried him and they dumped him out in the street. When my mother saw that, and they went to many Jewish homes and Jewish businesses, as you see, 75 people that we know were killed at that time. There were many mutilations, there were many injuries. And when my mother saw that, she said, it's time to leave this Arab country. After the synagogue, they were climbing into her building, which was next door. And my mother was afraid that they're going to come to the house and kill them. My mother and my 3 oldest siblings escaped from the back door of the house, never to return. My mother escaped to Lebanon. My father took her also there to Lebanon. And this is the main synagogue in Aleppo. It's a beautiful, beautiful synagogue. And in Lebanon, my mother was there. My father had to go back to Syria because he had business. He had to liquidate his business. It was difficult. By that time, the border between Syria and Lebanon has been closed, certainly for Jews. No Jews was allowed to live. They were imprisoned basically in Syria. My father escaped a few times back and forth and to see how my mother was doing, to bring money. In those days, there were no transfer of money. There was no Venmo or any of the Ozeli or anything like that. You had to go in person and give them money. And one day, as he was in his store, an officer from immigration came, who he knew him because he knew him from the past as he traveled many times. He told him, my father was a Hacham. He told him, Hacham Abadie. He says, we know that you have been going back and forth to Lebanon against the law. I was sent here to arrest you. He says, because I know you, I'm going to arrest you tomorrow. I'm coming to arrest you tomorrow. My father understood the message. That means you better escape tonight, otherwise you'll be arrested tomorrow and possibly put to death. Immediately, my father had nothing to take except his talit, his tefillin, his humash, his sidur, and maybe a pajama, and a small attaché case, and he ran to the train to take an overnight train that would last at that time 10 to 12 hours all the way to Lebanon. This is the train, as you can see. I'm not sure if it was exactly that train, but the train that looked like that. Now, my father also knew the conductor of that train because, again, he has been escaping a few times, and many times the way to escape is to use some money to bribe the conductor. So he knew him, and so he went to him, he told him, look, that's it. This is the last time I'm escaping. He said, and I need your help. He says, I will help you, but we have to be very careful. There's been a lot of inspections at the borders. And if they catch you, you and I will be put to death. He says, I'm going to put you in the cattle car, on the luggage and cattle car, and you better have to hide. And when we reach the Syrian border, you better hide very well. Can't even breathe. If they hear somebody breathing, they're going to go in and going to catch you. And then if you're dead, I am dead also. And so that's what he did. Put him in the cattle car. They arrived they have 2 borders. There's the Syrian border, then there's the Lebanese border. There's like maybe 200, 300 feet in between. He said, I'm going to open the door. They're going to ask me to open the door. You hide while they're inspecting the cattle car. And then I'm going to leave the door slightly open. So when we start moving towards the Lebanese border, you jump from that gate and you are on your own. He says, because if they don't catch you in the Syrian border, they will definitely catch you in the Lebanese border. And so that's exactly what happened. In the middle of the night, as they arrived at the Syrian border, my father was hiding, and my father was a scary cat. He would be scared of any little thing. And so imagine he was all shaking, scared, praying to Hashem to save him. The cattle car is open. The Syrian officers with his lanterns looking to see who's there. My father hid behind certain baggage there. And of course, he had to stop his breathing because if they would hear something, they would catch him. And unfortunately, apparently, where his feet were, if the lantern light will pass, they could see his feet. So the conductor understood if they catch him, they'll catch him too. And so he made some noise outside the train car. And so the Syrian officer was distracted and he turned to see what was happening. Once he turned to see what was happening, he took him to the next car for inspection. That way my father was saved. And the train started moving. My father opened that door of the cattle car and he jumped into a ravine. Took him maybe 4 to 5 hours to reach where my mother lived. At that time, it was a little town of Ale in the mountains of Lebanon. Every time I tell that story, I just imagine if my father was caught, I would not be here speaking to you today. I would not have been born. And so that moment was a very special moment for my father and, of course, for me as his son. My parents end up having 4 more children after the first 3 ones, and I'm the last one. So in Lebanon, as you can see, it was a beautiful, beautiful city. It was at that time used to be known as the Beirut was known as the Paris of the Middle East, Lebanon as the Switzerland of the Middle East. My father was a principal of a school. These are his students. This is me, the youngest. This is my brother. And they lived in Lebanon for 22 years. My family, my parents, my sister, brother, and my brother-in-law, these were the 3 rabbis. This is a very, very important picture that practically made it around the world. So in Lebanon, they lived, as I said, much better than in Syria. Lebanon was a very modern country, European style under French mandate. At that time, it was independent, but they followed French-European living. And so they lived well. They lived well until Black September. Black September was September 1970, when the PLO, Yasser Arafat, who was this guy right here, and also this guy, they did a civil war against King Hussein of Jordan. The Hussein army massacred 20,000 of them, minimum, and they expelled them from that country. Arafat, all the PLO, the entire Palestinian population that was rebelling. No other Arab country will accept them. Not Egypt, not Saudi Arabia, not Iraq, not Kuwait. No other Arab country. They forced Lebanon to accept them, being that Lebanon was the smallest Arab country at that time, the most modern, but it was mostly Christian. It was not a Muslim country. They were Muslims, but mostly Christians. So they forced them. So they welcomed them. They welcomed Yasser Arafat and the PLO, and of course they became what's known as the fifth column. Right? This group who fights against their own country, right? They caused a civil war. And we started seeing, as you can see, we started seeing protests, armies in the middle of the street, and in fact, they started the civil war. Before the civil war, we knew it was coming. We had few years of protests every Sunday and every Saturday against Israel, against the Jews. The Jewish community understood we better start leaving. Many Jews left. My family, we needed to leave also. And my brother, oldest brother, he had emigrated already to Mexico and he got married there in the Jewish community. And we asked him to take us out. Now in Lebanon, we were never Lebanese citizens. We were refugees. Even though I was born in Lebanon, my other siblings were born in Lebanon, but the Lebanese policy was, if you are a refugee, if your parents, grandparents, even 1,000 years before they were refugees, you were always a refugee. You will never become a citizen. So we were refugees. We could not leave the country without having another country accept us. And so we couldn't just even go on a tour. Once you leave a country that you are a refugee and you are not a citizen, you cannot come back. And then no country will accept us. So my brother in Mexico had to a lot of process to get us to leave Lebanon. What really pushed the envelope and made it real was this picture. These are the three rabbis, the Beit Din of Lebanon, the chief rabbi, the associate rabbi, and my father, who was the associate rabbi of that Beit Din. That picture appeared one day as a big posters in many mosques throughout Lebanon, and also in a magazine with a huge article saying these are the Zionist agents that are helping Israel and that are helping smuggle Jews and money to Israel. And then when you have your picture like this in an Arab country and you are being accused of being a Zionist agent, guess what that means? That means you are the target. Anybody can assassinate you with impunity, right? And they will call them a hero for assassinating you. My father and these three rabbis had to hide for at least 3 weeks or more until the government kind of guaranteed them protection and not to worry. My mother immediately sent a letter to my brother and told him, unless you take us out of this country, we will be dead. The whole family, not just your father. My brother worked very, very hard. Eventually, on Erev Pesach, we received a telegram. Again, those days there were no cell phones. A phone call will be very, very expensive. A telegram saying, congratulations, welcome to Mexico. That was Erev Pesach. We celebrated that Passover in Lebanon as though we were like Yetziat Mitzrayim. We are leaving. When we have the famous question, at least in the Syrian community, Mnen Jaye, where are you coming from? When we do the Mish'arotam, of course we have to say, Mitzrayim, Lawen Raiht, where are you going to Yerushalayim? No, we said, where are you coming? We're coming from Lebanon. And where are you going? We're going to Mexico. And so we went to Mexico. This is beautiful Mexico, which is the southern border of the United States. I went to Escuela Yavne, a Jewish school, very similar, I guess, to JLA. And beautiful Mexico City. Then in Mexico, I grew up. I lived there for 8 years. My family still lives until today. I wanted to become a doctor. Of course, I was accepted to the main 2 schools in Mexico City, but I had to go on Shabbat and do laboratories, which I refused to do. My father was a Hacham, was a rabbi of the community there. I heard of Yeshiva University, an institution that you can become a doctor and still be Shomer Shabbat, keep Kashrut. So I applied, I was accepted. This is Yeshiva University. I became a doctor, but I also became a rabbi. That's another story, which may take another time. So over the years, I became a rabbi of many congregations. The last one here in the States was the Edmund J. Safra Synagogue, which I was one of the founding rabbis. A beautiful, really beautiful central synagogue in New York City for the Sephardic community. And I organized a Sephardic heritage trip to Spain. It says going back to learn the Sephardic heritage. And that, Spain again, the land of Maimonides. We saw the beautiful aqueduct. And we went throughout Spain looking for what used to be Jewish communities, their histories, their rabbis, their scholars that existed over there. And in that trip, there was one, this is the Safra Synagogue where I served, beautiful one. And in that trip, we went to the Rua de la Juderia. We went to Santa Maria la Blanca, the beautiful synagogue that now is a church, but now it became a museum. There I met an Ashkenazi businessman who I was talking to him about how beautiful life was in Spain before the Inquisition, right? That they were the convivencia, the living of Jews, Christians, and Muslims in peace and harmony and coexistence. He says, that's wonderful, he says, because today, he told me, this was in 2010, he says, there's a country in the Gulf, an Arab country, that wants exactly that. Wants a convivencia, wants a coexistence with Muslim, Christians, and Jews. And that is the United Arab Emirates. He says, I want to introduce you to the leaders over there. You never know what could happen. I said, fine, this was in 2010. He says, anytime some of their officers, a government official, ambassador, anybody, or the sheikhs come to New York, I will make a meeting with you. And that's what happened for over several years. When they would come visit me at the synagogue. I will speak in Arabic. I will show them Jewish books written in Arabic, halakha books, Sefer Torah in Arabic, so on, the Chumash in Arabic, and so on. They were really fascinated to do so. So one day, this philanthropist in 2018 beginning of 19, tells me, I want to donate a Sefer Torah in memory of Sheikh Zayed. Sheikh Zayed was the founder of the United Arab Emirates. He says he passed away. I want to make it in his memory. And I want you to present it to the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Zayed, MBZ known, in Abu Dhabi. I said, for sure. We got him the Sefer Torah. We went to Abu Dhabi. This was in February 2019. And as you can see, we dedicated the Sefer Torah to the memory of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, may God have mercy, founding father of the UAE. And so we went to that, and this picture really has to do with Spain, Toledo. It should be in the previous slide. But as you can see, this is the Sefer Torah that we brought. This is Mohammed bin Zayed, MBZ, who's now the president or the emir of the UAE. And this is the Minister of Tolerance, Sheikh Mubarak bin Nahyan, who held my hand when I wrote a letter. I'm a sofer also. I did not write the whole Sefer Torah, but I finished it. And so here now, MBZ, standing next to me, I explained to him the Sefer Torah that's also with him at that same ceremony. And I explained to him how Sifrei Torah have not changed one letter throughout millennia. I said, if you take a Sefer Torah from Russia and a Sefer Torah from Yemen, they're all written exactly the same, with the same, not even one letter difference, right? He was impressed, and he said, now I understand the strength and the unity of the Jewish people and why they have survived all these centuries and millennia. So that was before I even became the rabbi this was in 2019. Right before the Abraham Accords, he had mentioned to me about the Abraham Accords, that they were going to happen. We spoke, we got involved in that. And then once they signed the accord, I was requested to go to the United Arab Emirates to be the chief rabbi of the Jewish community, to start the Jewish community. There was less than 200 Jews over there, not very well organized. They wanted a rabbi to go and organize them and represent them officially. In Arab countries, the religions are represented officially, not unlike in the West, by a rabbi or by a Muslim's imam or by a priest if it's Christianity. So we got there, we were welcomed. So this was, one second. Okay, I'll show you maybe later. This is, we were welcomed very, very, very well. I was given a tour of their museum, Ittihad, the Unification Museum, by one of the sheikhs over there. This is the beautiful Burj Al Khalifa. We celebrated Hanukkah. I arrived there in November. Hanukkah was a few weeks later, and many of the Emiratis joined us for that celebration. It was done publicly, outdoors. We were welcomed. It was incredible. This picture, for many of you who may recognize this person, he's the head of KISS, the musical band KISS. I don't even remember his first name, but he was there. Gene Simmons, correct. So we met him over there. He was invited not for Hanukkah, but to give a concert for New Year's Eve. Now I was told I should go and meet him. He's a Jew, by the way. He's a Jew. He's an Israeli Jew who studied in a yeshiva in elementary school in Israel. Until today, until when I met him, he knew how to quote the Talmud. He knew how to quote Mefarshim, and we spoke incredibly. It was an incredible, that's why I have his picture, because I respected him. I don't know much about his other life. Yes?
Actual name is Chaim.
Yes, correct. Chaim
Wicks.
That's correct. So he told me his actual name. Thank you. So this is just for the young generation. Very interesting. We should be finishing soon. This is the Abraham Accord, and this was my first day when I landed in the airport of Dubai. He was the Hazan of the community. He welcomed me as his rabbi, as the first senior rabbi of the country. In Dubai, my function was very official function. The government would call me for events, and so you can hear first I was called to install a mezuzah at the Dubai Diamond Exchange. Dubai Diamond Exchange. Here we are at the slaughterhouse to make sure for kosher meats. I was, as you can see the meat behind, we created an Arabian Kosher Certification Agency. And this is a very interesting story. This is a family of Yemenites that I was informed that they were in prison, not in prison, they were being persecuted in Yemen, and they need to escape. I made one phone call to a government official in charge of security in the Emirates, and I gave him their name, gave him their passport. I said, you need to make a mission to save their life. He said, give me a few days, I'll let you know if we can. 3 days later, he called me, he says, we're gonna take that mission and save them. And they saved 17 people within 2 weeks that they were being persecuted and almost killed in Yemen. So again, we had some fun, as you can see. We took some camel rides in the Emirates, but we also had very interesting things. There was establishment of Kosher Arabia. There's a food processing, kosher food for the Emirates and all the airlines in the Gulf. I was invited to give what's known as the Mohammed bin Zayed meeting. I spoke to the whole nations via television. It was live, I spoke, and here when I was selling the Hametz, the first time Hametz was being sold in the United Arab Emirates to an Emirati, and here is a very famous Emirati. You may know him, his name is Lu'al al-Sharif. Lu'al al-Sharif is an influencer, very pro-Israel, very pro-Jewish. He learned with me classes of Torah. Here he is again, right? And this is our synagogue that we had. This is a synagogue when we were reading. This is one of my official clothing that I had over there, that somebody gave it to me as a gift, and I wore it. And this is actually in Bahrain. So my work was not just the UAE, but included Bahrain and all the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council. As you can see, again, this is Purim Sauda. Many Emiratis will join us. This is, again, another gathering that we have. This is the Druze community that came to visit us, and they gave me the award. They named me as the Peace Ambassador, United Arab Emirates over there. So my work over there was really, really extensive with the entire Gulf community. This is at the greatest mosque in Abu Dhabi, known as the Sheikh Zayed Mosque. It's a beautiful, beautiful mosque. I was invited to give the eulogy on the Memorial Day of Sheikh Zayed, the founder of the country. And as you can see, how many Emiratis were there. That day, there were maybe 1,500 or so people, including sheikhs, imams, government officials, diplomats, and Emiratis. And here I am giving the speech. It was Arabic and English. Again, it was also televised to the entire country. Just to tell you the kavod that they gave. When I got up from my seat to go to speak, the entire assembly stood up until I reached the podium, and then they sat down. And now when I finished, by leaving the podium to go to my seat, again, the entire assembly of 1,500 people got up and showed the respect. Slightly before that, this is also very famous, you may know him, Imam Muhammad Tawhidi. He's a Shiite, right, born in Najaf, right? His parents are Iraqi and Persians. This is Lu'ay al-Sharif again. And he is very, very pro-Jewish. He's also an influencer. You could Google him, Muhammad al-Tawhidi. And one of my things that I had to do was to bring an Emirati to meet the Pope in Rome. So we went there, we presented him with a gift from United Arab Emirates, again, to symbolize the coexistence between Jews, Muslims, and Christians. And I think this might be our last slide, the one before. Again, here we see we did an event with Imam Tawhidi, right? Ambassador Dani Danon, who is the present ambassador of the Israel in the United Nations. Here is in the synagogue. This is my actually real official garb. Imam Tawhidi, but this Imam is from Najaf itself. He is a religious leader from Iran, yet very pro-Israel, very pro-Jewish, very anti-Khomeini. But they have to keep their mouth very quiet. But they are working. They founded the Global Imam Council. You could Google it. It's very pro-Israel, and they always issue declarations against Hamas, against the Shia, against Iran, but very pro-Israel. This is, again, another event that we have, and this is, again, with Imam Tawhidi, myself. This was the Abraham Accords Global Leadership Summit. And this is it. This is one of my meetings that I had. This is a very important personality, Sheikh Muhammad al-Husseini. You could Google him. He is the cousin of Nasrallah, the Hezbollah leader. He disagreed with him over 10 years ago and split from Hezbollah, left Lebanon because he was running for his life, settled in France. I helped him actually settle in France for 2 years, and then he moved from France to the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. He is the one who has been interviewed in the last several months. He warned Nasrallah that he's going to be killed. He passed me few information that I needed to pass to Israel, so I'm very friendly with him till today. As part of my functions that I had, I was knighted in Venezia, Italy, again, as part of the work that we did with coexistence, the Abraham Accord. And lastly, here I was recognized. This was in New York City, actually, 6 months ago. And I think that's the last of it. So just to conclude in a minute, that my life going back, first born in an Arab country from parents that suffered Arab persecution, even going all the way back to Spain, going through Mexico, growing up there, coming to the United States, and yet making, in a sense, closing the circle by going back to another Arab country, where we had to escape an Arab country for persecution because we were Jewish. Here I was welcomed because I was a Jew. I was welcomed, giving the red carpet with open arms, help establish a Jewish community. I'm very, very optimistic for the future. I do believe that more and more countries will join the Abraham Accords, will make big of Israel, as long as we need to clean up some of the terrorists, anti-Israel, that still are in the region, which it will happen sooner or later. But I'm very, very optimistic, where all the children of Abraham can live together with respect, coexistence, and acceptance. Thank you very much. Yes.
I just want to thank Mr. Beiruz Akimian, who has to actually leave back to the airport right now. He came all the way from New York to present to you guys, and I hope you appreciate that. And we have a small little gift for Mr. Akimian, which we would like to honor you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And of course, I want to thank Rabbi Eli Abadie. Thank you for always inspiring us. Thank you for bringing more peace. You know, Talmidei Chachamim mabim shalom ba'olam. The true test that someone is a true Talmid Chacham, a true scholar, is that they increase peace in this world. Thank you. Thank you very much. If you guys have any questions, they're hanging around for a little bit. Wishing you guys a wonderful day. Please go into where your next thing is to be. Thank you.